Welcome back. It has been a minute since I've made one of these videos, a video at all, but it is high time to make another one, and I've got something exciting to get to talk about this time. So as I've mentioned a couple times on the channel before, I am a part of a webcam league for the ScoreZ DBZ card game online. I help run it with a couple of friends, and we help, we just organize, monthly events, bi-weekly tournaments over webcam, and I got to play Turles pretty recently in one of those events, and as you can see from the title, went undefeated with it and was able to secure first place at that event that we had. I thought it'd be fun to talk about what actually is in the deck. Now, this is a deck built to be played within this webcam league. In this league, we do have some fan-supported content, some new sets to kind of keep the game fresh and feeling like it's still alive. So there will be some cards from that included in this deck. So if you're looking at it as like a historical score player or whatever, you'll see some stuff you don't really recognize, and I apologize for that, but we'll try to make it make as much sense as we can. That said, this deck is a deck that unfortunately can't really exist without the new support that it got. So this is a deck that if you aren't playing with the newer stuff, you probably won't be able to recreate. But I do think it's a really cool list and a really fun way to play Turles, so I thought I would still share it anyway. Starting right out of the gate, let's just kind of go through the stack here. We're just running the 1 through 3 Turles that came out of Cosmic Anthology. There is no level 4, so we just have the 3. Now that is a bit of a risk because you can get MPPV'd on by a deck with a 1 through 4, or even a deck with a 1 through 3. So this deck is risky in Standard. Might be a great choice in Tough Enough, but I played it in a Standard event, and luckily I was able to end the game fast enough to not have to worry about it. But it is something to be concerned about. It's just how easy it is to lose to a cheese 1 through 3 MPPV. So you got to be careful there. But with Turles, we've got a constant combat power, damage from your attacks cannot be redirected, and then a power, physical attack doing +1 power stage of damage for each personality in play, raise your anger 1 level. So you get an anger, you get to do +1 damage for each personality in play, even if it's just you and your opponent, that's 2, so it's just physical attack doing +2. Damage can't be redirected, means they can't pass it over to their allies, so in the league that we're in, there are a lot of people that run allies, so this was kind of a good answer to that. But just being able to make sure that your opponent's MP has to take the damage every single time means that you're going to maximize the amount of damage this deck can do. Another nice thing about Turles is he is from fairly early in the series, so his power level is still pretty low, 24,000 at 5 above. It's pretty likely that he'll get double powered by a lot of MPs, which means he'll be at full and go first. That's really huge with a deck like this. Getting to go first, enter right away, and just immediately start laying the beat down is really, really strong. Man, we're having trouble focusing today. So going first is really, really strong, especially in a deck that is as aggressive as this one. Giving your opponent the least time to set up possible is huge. Now we have a level 2, damage from your attacks can't be redirected or reduced. And then physical attack doing +3 stage of damage. You can remove an ally and play from the game. If you do, raise your anger 1. So we get a little bit of removal, a decent attack, and some more damage can't be this or that. We don't typically go to this level. We just kind of want to camp this level 1. But not bad to have this removal here. 3, on the other hand, is a pretty decent power. Damage can't be redirected, reduced, or prevented, which is huge. Your opponent can't use endurance, they can't use effects to reduce damage. That's really strong. Energy attack, doing +1 stage of damage for each ally in your and your opponent's removed from the game piles. If Tree of Might is in play, this does +2 power stages for each ally instead. So this has potential to be a kind of big attack if your opponent was also playing allies or something like that. But again, it's not something we're really focusing on with this deck. I think there's a version of Turles you can play where you rush to this level and make that happen, but it's not this one. Really, we're just going to be using Turles level 1 here. Then, Saiyan style Mastery from the Cell Saga. This card really needs no introduction, but when entering combat, discard a life card. If that card was Saiyan, draw 2 cards. If not, draw 1 card. Most of the cards in this deck are going to be Saiyan, so that we can have 2 extra cards in our hand every turn. In a game where you have a 3-card or 4-card hand, getting to go to 6 cards in your hand is really, really strong. And then we're going to play South Kai Sensei. This is super, super important to this deck. And this is one of the only times I'll go over Sensei-related stuff, because a lot of times I don't cover the Sensei content, because it depends on your meta and stuff like that. But this one is really important. So the South Kai Sensei, you get 5 cards. Once per game during your non-combat step, you can search your life deck for a level 1 ally and place it in play at 3 power stages above 0. So, turn 1, we're going to start the game, hopefully be at full going first. We'll pop our South Kai Sensei and go get our first ally. So that's what we're going to do. We've got a Sensei deck here. We only get 5 slots. There's a couple things in here that are pretty obvious. Saiyan Headshot goes in most Sensei decks. City and Turmoil is good if you're stuck against a good non-combat stasis deck, and some ally hate is really strong. But we're going to run this new card here, the Crusher Core, in our Sensei deck. Now, if your MP is Turles, this card counts as 5 personalities for card effects. Constant combat power. When entering combat, if Tree of Might is not in play, you may search your life deck for 1 and put it into play. If Turles is your MP, you may use this power regardless of his power level. So, when the game starts, we're going to Sensei this card into the deck. We'll lose something in the deck, but we want to make sure that this is the card that ends up staying in our deck. If we want to decide something else in, we don't want to lose this by doing so, so we only start with it out of the deck. But once we put it in, we're going to start the game, grab the Crusher Core. So turn 1 starts, we get the Crusher Core out, then we declare entering combat. When we do so, we will search our deck for a copy of Tree of Might, which we are running 3 copies of. Tree of Might, all attacks do +2 power stages of damage, both yours and your opponent's. When entering combat, each player may search his life deck for a freestyle drill and place it into play. Some decks don't run one of those, so sometimes that doesn't hurt you at all. But if you're playing against a deck that does, well, that's okay. They can get something too. But what you're going to grab one of 3 copies of Devastation Drill. So, Devastation Drill. All of your physical attacks do +5 power stages of damage. Discard this drill if you have any other non-combat cards in play. So if you have another Devastation Drill in play, you lose them, so don't want to do that. But each turn that you don't have one of those in play, you can use Tree of Might to go get a copy and keep the beats up. So that's our sort of starting combo. So turn 1, we get to play our ally. We get to play our Tree of Might. Nice thing too with this is we get to play Tree of Might without having to skip combat, which you normally would have to do. So you get this, and you get Devastation Drill. So if we look at our Turles level 1 power, if this is what we throw for our first attack of the game, physical attack doing +1 power stage of damage for each personality in play, raise your anger 1. So 1 plus your opponent's, that's 2. This card counts as 5, so that's 7. Then you've got 8, 9, and then +5 more, so that's 14. So you have a physical attack for 14 as your first attack. You've very hopefully pulled off your mastery and gotten to have a 5-card hand against your opponent. That's a huge, huge start. And as you can imagine, getting to do that every turn is really big. Now having all of your attacks do +7 is really strong. So getting into then the rest of the deck, clear up this a little bit. We do run 1 copy of Earth Dragon Ball 3. Draw 3 cards, place the top card of your discard pile at the bottom of your life deck. I think any aggro deck should run a copy of this. Just getting to draw 3 extra cards is pretty great. For the combat cards in the deck, we don't have a ton, but we do, of course, have Time as a Warrior's Tool. Every deck runs this. Stop a physical, stop an energy, stop all of your opponent's physical and energy for the rest of combat, 1 per deck. Super Saiyan effect. Your opponent can't perform physical attacks for the remainder of combat. You're obviously always going to have that too. And then Saiyan Truce card. Stop this combat. Turn ends and the player may hold all his extra cards until his next turn. discard from the game after use. So you get a truce card, you get to keep your whole hand, then next turn you get to draw your 3 cards plus your mastery. You might get to have a 10-card hand. Gross. You only get to have one of those per deck. You're obviously going to run it if you're playing Saiyan. Then we've got 1 copy of Saiyan Negation. Now this is another one of the new cards I was talking about. Stop the effects of any combat card. Use when needed. So that first part of the effect is just Sphere. Trunks Energy Sphere. But there's a styled one for each color now. If you declare it Tokugawa, your Saiyan style attacks do +2 power stages of damage for the remainder of combat. Your opponent's personalities lose 2 power stages. Limit 1 per deck, remove from game after use. So you get one of these. It's just a cool special energy sphere. This one just making our attacks do more damage in a deck that's already trying to do that. It's pretty good. Android 17 Smirks, villains only. Your opponent removes all of his drills in play from the game, 1 per deck. So just a little board clear. We get one of it. We're a villain. We should play it. We have 3 copies of Android 18's Stare Down. Villains only. Look at your opponent's hand. Choose a card. Your opponent discards their card. That's great. You're an aggro deck. If you look at their hand and pull their 1 block, you're going to get away with a lot of extra damage. Or if you pull their 1 big attack that could hurt you, or their 1 attack that could get rid of a non-combat so you lose your dev drill. There's a lot of reasons that card is good. Then we run 3 copies of Excessive Aggression. Now this is a strange card that doesn't see a lot of play, but there's some stuff that's really cool with it, I think. So Endurance 3, that's good. If you played 3 attacks from 3 different cards from your hand in 3 consecutive attacker attacks phases as combat, discard the top 9 cards of your opponent's deck. Now in a Saiyan Cell Saga deck where you have a 6-card hand most of the time, it's pretty easy to throw 3 straight attacks. So getting to pull this off after doing 3 attacks in a row, and then they just have to mill 9, is huge, especially in a deck that's doing +7 on every attack it's doing. You can really, really dish out damage. Into the physicals in the deck. Now this is the larger portion of the deck. We've got 2 World Champion Punch. Now this card is, if you declared a Tokugawa, this card is a styled card matching your Tokugawa style. So if you mill this for your mastery, it's Saiyan style, that's great. Focused physical attack, doing +4 stages of damage. Choose for the following effect to last either for the remainder of combat or until your opponent deals at least 1 life card of damage to you. All life cards of damage from your attacks are removed from the game instead of discarded. We're typically going to pick until end of combat, so for the rest of the combat, all damage you do just gets removed from game. They can't use some effect to get cards out of their discard pile. They can't use Transform, which is a mechanic from the League. There's a lot of things that's really good for. We are an aggro deck, so of course we're going to play 3 Gohan's Kick and 3 Boo's Fury. Gohan's Kick, physical attack doing +3. Cards that end combat or cards that stop all physicals or all energies can't be used. We don't want our opponent to be stopping a whole bunch of our attacks. We want them all to hit, so cards like that are good. Majin Buu's Fury, physical attack doing +4, empower 2. For the remainder of combat during each player's attack or attacks phase, they can only attack or pass. Raise your anger 1. Attacking, passing, great. That keeps your opponent from using combat cards. It keeps your opponent from using personality powers that don't attack. It keeps them from using drill effects, all sorts of things. Really huge. We got 3 Saiyan Charge. Physical attack doing 7 stages. The personality performing this attack has a higher power rating than the personality defending it. Your opponent can't use their Mastery and Sensei cards for the remainder of turn. So, while we do have a low power level, we are a physical beats deck, so a lot of times we're going to try to get our opponent to 0 stages, and 0, regardless of whatever our power level is always lower than wherever we're at. So hopefully, most of the time this will go off, and your opponent will lose their Mastery and Sensei for the rest of the turn. That's really, really strong. Saiyan Dashing Kick. Physical attack doing +8 power stages of damage. Raise your anger 1 level. Not a incredibly flashy card, just huge damage. So you got your table damage, +8, +5 from the dev drill, +2 from the tree. That's, what is that, +15 before you even see what your table damage is. Just a ridiculously huge attack. Saiyan Beef, 3 copies of this. because you're always going to run this in a Saiyan deck. Physical attack doing +3, empowered 2. Your opponent's personalities cannot gain stages until the end of your next turn, so you just keep them at 0. There's nothing they can do, well, almost nothing they can do to get their stages up and get away from you doing maximum beat damage. Speaking of maximum beats, 3 copies of Saiyan Cross Punch. Physical attack doing 5. If you declare 2 Kawaza, it does 10 instead. So it's physical attack doing 10, plus Tree and Dev. It's plus physical attack doing 17. Disgusting. Saiyan Acute Rapid Slam, another card that most Saiyan decks are going to run, not one that needs a ton of introduction. It's focus physical doing +5 for the remainder of combat. When you use a Saiyan style card to perform an attack, it goes to the bottom of your deck instead of discard. Just keeps your deck count high and lets you keep using your attacks over and over again. Saiyan Destiny is a card that is huge in this deck. We run 3 full copies of it. Physical attack, if you declare Tokawaza, this attack does +3 power stages of damage, remains in play to be used 1 more time this combat. So it does +3 with Tree and Dev Drill. That is +10 stages of damage. So physical attack doing +10 stays on the table to be used an extra time. So that's just 20 stages total by itself without counting whatever your physical attack table damage is going to be. Nutty. Alright, 3 more new cards. This is Saiyan Dual Rushdown. It's a physical attack doing +2 power stages of damage. If successful, draw a card. Drawing a card is always good. If you performed... hang on. Stay focused with me here. If you have at least 1 ally in play, this card performs another physical attack doing +3 power stages of damage immediately after the first one, using that table rating instead. So if we have our Crusher Core on the table still, then we get to do 2 attacks with this card instead of just 1. But it'll still get all the buffs and stuff from our from our Tree and our Dev Drill and stuff like that. We'll use whatever their power rating is. If we don't have this, it's still a decent attack that can potentially draw a card. If we do have this, it's 2 attacks and maybe draws a card. Awesome card. And then 3 Saiyan Youth Bruise, Endurance 2. Some endurance is always good. Physical attack doing +4. Shuffle 3 Saiyan style cards in your discard pile into your life deck. Then RFG. Getting some cards back. Specific ones is good, especially good ones that we really want to use. Good blocks if we need them. Huge attacks like Dash and Kick or Cross Punch. Things like that. All awesome. Then we've got some energy attacks. We have 1 copy of Saiyan Energy Bullet. Energy attack, raise your anger 1, empower 4, so it could just be an energy for 8. But if you just want to be an energy for 4, for the remainder of combat, damage from your attacks can't be prevented, and any life cards of damage that you deal are removed instead of discarded. So it's sort of like World Champion Punch, but just as an energy attack. Pretty good, and if we don't need it to do that, then it's just a really big energy attack. 2 copies of Saiyan Strength Blast. Energy attack doing 3 life cards, empower 4, so maybe 7. Discard up to 3 of your opponent's drills in play. Move from the game after use. We just get a little bit of board hate, which is good. 2 copies of a new card called Saiyan Gogeta's Rapid Fire. Focused energy attack. If successful, draw a card. If used by a fused personality, it does a whole bunch of other stuff. We're never going to be a fused personality, so it's really just a focused energy that could potentially draw a card. Easy. Nothing to write home about, but drawing another card is always cool. 2 copies of Saiyan Execution, another new card. Energy attack doing 5 life cards of damage. Raise your anger 1 level. Empowered 2. If you don't need this second part of the effect, you can just make an energy for 7 life. If you do need the other half, though, remove an opponent's ally and play from the game. Then you can pay an additional X power stages for this attack. For every 2 stages paid, discard an additional ally. So you can just use this to really clean up a messy board of your opponent's allies to prevent them from doing a bunch of damage back to you. In the same vein as Saiyan Destiny was, we have Saiyan Energy Stream. Now this is a new card from NZ5, the set that we just released. It is, however, also a re-release of a card that Retro put out in its virtual sets back in the kind of 2014-ish era. Between ScoreZ and Pansy, there was another group of guys kind of doing the same thing, and this was one of the cards they made that we thought was good enough to kind of bring back again. But it is Endurance 2, energy attack doing 3 life cards of damage. If you declared a Tokuiwaza, this attack stays on the table to be used 2 more times. So, 3 life cards, you can do it 2 more times, that's 9 life cards. Pretty cool. Multiple attacks in a deck that already has a huge hand. You are also just increasing your overall action economy. Strong card. And then we have 3 Saiyan Power Burst. Energy attack doing 3 life cards of damage. Empower 3. If you declared a Tokuiwaza and you have no allies in play, you can play a level 1 ally from your discard pile at 3 above 0. So it's an energy, can be 6 if you need it to. If not, and this card got discarded, you can put it back into play. That's all it's for. Then we have 3 Saiyan Power Beam. Energy attack, Empower 3. If you declare Tokuiwaza, then for the remainder of combat, your opponent can't use their Mastery and Drills. Remove from the game after use. This is huge. Masteries have really strong effects, and taking that away from them is really good. So, with this ally, grabbing the Tree of Might every turn that it isn't in play is huge, because if our opponent uses one of their own battlegrounds to replace our Tree of Might so that we lose it, as soon as they enter combat, we just get to go get a Tree of Might and get rid of the one that they played. So if they tried to play a City in Turmoil, if they tried to play a Dismal Future hurts us real bad. So getting out of that is huge, and we can do it really easily with this. If they tried to play a Protective Shelter or a Cells Arena or Gravity Chamber, stuff like that, getting out of those is really big, and we can do it really easily. The last part of the deck here is just some defense. We are an aggressive deck, but we of course want to cover our bases too. Say in Perfect Defense, if we have a higher power rating than our opponent's personality, it stops a physical and then stays on the table to be used multiple times. So we can just use this over and over and over again as long as we still have a higher power level than our opponent. Nappa's Physical Resistance stops all of your opponent's physicals for the turn. Vegeta's Physical Stance stops all of your opponent's physicals for the turn. You can sense a theme there, I imagine. 3 copies of Saiyan Cross Block. This is another one of the new cards. Endurance 1 stops a physical attack, raise your anger 1. If you declared a Tokuiwaza, you may remove 3 Saiyan style cards in your discard pile from the game to draw a card. A block that can draw a card. Incredibly strong. 3 copies of Saiyan Stop, staple Saiyan Block, stop a physical or energy, and gain 7 power stages. An Omni block that gains stages is always a welcome addition. Then we've got a Goku's Energy Absorption. Stop an energy attack, take 2 cards from your discard pile, put them at the bottom of your life deck. Limit 1 per deck, remove from the game after use. Energy block, we can put a couple of cool cards back into the deck. There's a couple things we can do with that. One of the most important things that we do with it, though, is we put Devastation Drills back into the deck so that our Tree of Might can play them again. And then the energy block that every Saiyan deck will run, Saiyan Brace. Stop a physical or energy, another Omni block, that's great. Raise your anger 1, okay. Search your deck for Saiyan Truce card and put it into your hand. Saiyan Truce card was the card that I showed you earlier that said I don't have to discard my hand at the end of the turn. So I can block an attack, then play that card to keep my hand, and then draw a whole bunch of new cards, and then beat your face in with them. Just really strong. Every Saiyan deck runs that. Oh well, every aggressive Saiyan deck, which is most Saiyan decks. But that's it. That is the whole shebang. Turles is my favorite character in all of the franchise. It is exciting for me to have a Turles deck that functions, and functions quite well. The addition of the NZ support stuff, the Crusher Core, is a crazy strong card. Really strong card. If it was on a MP that was any better than Turles, it would probably be problematic. But it kind of just helps make a pretty bad MP quite playable, which is awesome. Tree of Might is a really cool card that doesn't hinder us nearly as much as it does in a lot of decks where you have to take a turn off to play a battleground. In this deck, we can get out of that and just go right into combat. And I think it's really cool what this little package does with Dev Drill. It's very thematic to the show. Turn 1, you get to play the Crusher Core. The Crusher Core plants the tree. The tree comes into play, plays Devastation Drill, which is sort of the fruit that you get to eat, and then Turles gets to punch for 14 as his first attack. It's just a really cool thematic thing that the deck can do, and feels a lot like the movie it's a part of. Anyway, this is a 25-minute video. I didn't mean for it to be that long. These score decks being 85 cards is a lot to go over. But anyway, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for checking out this deck profile. If you are interested at all in what you saw here today, any of the new stuff, I'll have a Google Drive to the sets that we use linked in the description. But also I will link the Discord where we play. You're welcome to come join us. We do free tournaments every other weekend-ish. We do monthly tournaments with like a prize pot and then like a world championship kind of thing at the end of the year. We do fun community events. It's just a cool place to be. Anyway, thanks so much for your time, and see you next time.